Okay, let's unpack this.
Hmm.
For the last couple of years, if you followed the tragic headlines coming out of Sudan, the narrative has been, well, pretty uniform.
Right. It's a civil war.
Exactly. A devastating internal conflict between two military factions. But the sources we're looking at today, they paint a radically different picture.
They really do. And our mission today is to really analyze this stack of source material because it fundamentally challenges that whole internal conflict narrative.
It says this isn't internal at all.
Not primarily, no. It posits that the horrific violence which has led to this catastrophic civilian loss is actually an externally managed, externally funded proxy war.
And the sources are very specific about who they allege is driving it. The core claim we have to analyze is that this conflict is directly supported by Israel and the United Arab Emirates.
That is the central claim, and it's a highly controversial one.
Ah.
But if you follow the source's premise, it shifts the entire focus from a domestic power struggle to, calculated geopolitical and economic exploitation.
And the human cost. I mean, the source material puts it at over 160,000 civilian deaths.
In just the last 2 years. That number alone. It's allegedly the direct byproduct of this external strategy.
That staggering figure demands a deeper look. So this deep dive, it's about defining the conflict according to these sources. Who are the players? What's at stake in Sudan? And what are the alleged logistics here?
Well, we have to start by identifying the two sides, at least as this material defines them.
Okay.
On one side, you have the Sudanese people and their national armed forces. On the other side, the sources name the Rapid Support Forces, or the RSF militias.
And these RSF militias are the ones allegedly backed by Israeli and Emirate support?
That's the claim. But here's where the narrative just completely diverges from a standard civil war.
Right. Because the sources claim the RSF isn't actually made up of Sudanese fighters.
Not at all. It asserts that the RSF does not recruit fighters from within Sudan's population. It suggests that RSF is essentially a private, multinational mercenary army.
Bought and paid for.
Exactly. The claim is that external money, specifically Israeli and Emirate money, is used to buy fighters from other nations.
And that detail is key. The sources name specific countries.
Yeah.
And they're not just neighbors.
Right, you'd expect maybe some regional fighters.
Sure, they mention Chad and Libya, that makes sense. But they also list South Africa, and then completely out of left field, Colombia and El Salvador.
From Latin America.
Yeah.
That raises a huge question of logistics, doesn't it? If the goal is deniability, why recruit from thousands of miles away?
What does the source suggest?
It suggests the financial power of the external backers is so sophisticated they can just move money and contract recruitment across continents. It bypasses the need for any local buy-in.
And if you follow that logic, this disconnect, the fact that the fighters have no ties to Sudan, no cultural or historical connection, it feeds directly into the tactics they use.
Precisely. The material details just horrific atrocities allegedly committed by this foreign-led force. Things like systematically wiping out entire towns, setting property and people on fire, executing civilians in broad daylight.
It's brutal.
And, most horrifyingly, the extensive use of sexual violence, specifically raping women in front of their families as a weapon of war.
The source frames that as a deliberate tactic, not just random violence.
Yes, a calculated tool to terrorize and displace the population. Systemic terror.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. We have the how, but now the why. Why would Israel and the UAE allegedly invest so much into sustaining this? The payoff must be huge.
The material points to two interconnected goals: geopolitical dominance and, resource acquisition.
Let's start with the geopolitics.
It's all about Sudan's location. The Red Sea coastline, its maritime ports. That's the immediate prize.
Control those ports secures maritime routes for Israel.
Exactly, and it provides a vital base for monitoring regional rivals. The source specifically names Iran and China as targets for this intelligence expansion. It would give Israel a massive intelligence footprint across Africa.
Okay, so that's the strategic angle. What about the economic one?
Gold. Plain and simple. Sudan has vast, rich gold reserves. The source material basically frames this conflict as a massive pillaging operation.
And the numbers they present on this are? They're kind of hard to believe.
They are. The material claims the UAE, a country with no significant gold mines of its own, is one of the world's top gold exporters.
That doesn't add up.
Right. And the source claims to explain that anomaly. It alleges that in 2022 alone, Over 400 tons of gold were smuggled out of Africa, mostly Sudan, into Dubai and Abu Dhabi.
400 tons.
Sold for more than $40 billion. This is why the source calls it the gold equivalent of the blood diamond trade.
That's a very powerful, very deliberate comparison. It suggests the money is being laundered through international markets, circumventing any kind of ethical oversight.
It's an economic lifeline, yeah, allegedly funded by this human tragedy.
And what about Israel's alleged economic motive? The source has a take on that, too.
It does. It presents a darker, more urgent narrative there. It claims Israel sees this resource extraction as essential for its own survival.
Survival how?
Citing concerns over a crashing economy and the expectation of global sanctions, especially related to its actions in Palestine. This African resource pillaging, as the source calls it, is framed as an urgent financial buffer.
But let's transition to the direct evidence. How do the sources connect these external powers to the RSF on the ground?
Well, first, it points to the UAE's history. It alleges this isn't a new strategy for them.
Okay.
It claims that since the Arab Spring in 2011, the UAE has recruited over 30,000 mercenaries and private armies to dominate the Red Sea and Horn of Africa. So this is just the latest, biggest version of that playbook.
And what about the ties to Israel? The source names the RSF commander, General Dagalo or Hemeti.
It does. It claims Dagalo established direct ties with Israeli intelligence agencies about 4 years ago.
Yeah, and what came of that relationship?
Tangible support, according to the sources. Israel allegedly sent a shipment of advanced spying equipment.
Spyware.
High-tech spyware, yes. The source alleges its purpose was to help the RSF track and assassinate political opponents.
So not just guns, but intelligence tools.
And also guns. On-the-ground reports cited in the material claim to have identified Israeli rocket launchers and other artillery platforms in the hands of RSF militias.
Which would be a huge capability boost.
It's what transitions them from a local militia to a force that can wage a high-intensity war. And this leads to maybe the most extreme claim in the entire document.
Okay.
The source makes this extraordinary, highly inflammatory assertion that the RSF has adopted tactics that it attributes to the Israeli army. It calls it a template for genocide.
And we have to be absolutely clear here. We are reporting on the source's specific terminology and their claim.
Absolutely. This is their term, their comparison.
So what are the specific shared tactics the document uses to justify that comparison?
It cites two main things. First, the systematic bombing of civilian infrastructure. Hospitals, schools, food centers, mosques, used as a form of collective punishment.
And the second?
The second is that it alleges both groups depend heavily on foreign or, disconnected fighters, and that both are accused of using systematic sexual violence as a weapon of war against an indigenous population.
It's the alleged systematic nature of it all that the source really hammers home.
Yes. It frames it as a deliberate strategy, not random acts of war.
Let's bring this back to the human element. Beyond the huge death toll, the source highlights the city of El Fasher.
El Fasher is the gateway to Darfur. It's strategically vital, and the source reports that its 260,000 residents were, at the time of writing, under a total siege.
How long?
For 500 days. Denied all food, all medical supplies. The strategy is literally starvation.
The siege itself becomes the weapon.
It does, and the sources detail the reality of that, including the massacre of an entire maternity ward in the city's last functioning hospital.
Wow.
It's the calculated destruction of the ability to survive.
So amid all this horror, the source claims there's also a coordinated effort by Israel and the UAE to control the narrative, a disinformation campaign.
A massive one, yes. It alleges they're actively spreading lies on social media and through influential voices in the West.
New kind of lies.
Things like falsely comparing the Sudanese army to extremist groups like ISIS or Hamas, or trying to tie the Sudanese people to the Muslim Brotherhood.
And there's a specific goal here, according to the source.
Right. To deliberately misrepresent the conflict to Western audiences. They cite attempts to frame the war as a religious fight, Muslims versus Christians.
Which is easily debunked. Over 90% of Sudan is Muslim.
Exactly. It's an attempt to simplify a complex geopolitical conflict into a false religious trope that the West might, more easily digest.
So what does this all mean?
I mean, the material we reviewed just fundamentally reframes the tragedy. It's not a homegrown struggle, but a coordinated, externally funded assault disguised as an internal conflict.
So the main takeaway you should have from this deep dive is that alleged shift in definition. The sources are asking you to see this not as a civil war, but as a proxy war.
A war powered by foreign mercenaries, financed by international states, and driven by Red Sea control and the pillaging of billions in gold.
It makes you confront the idea that the chaos you see on the news isn't random, that it's calculated.
And the source doesn't just stop at analysis, it suggests direct action, a global boycott, divestment, and sanctions campaign targeting the UAE. It specifically names Emirates and Etihad Airlines.
Because of the nation's reliance on foreign trade.
Yes, and its alleged role in funding this conflict.
Which really raises a provocative question for you listening to this. What responsibility do international consumers have when a major nation's economy is so closely tied to alleged conflict funding in another country?
It's a challenge, isn't it, to the idea of just passively consuming news and goods. It forces you to connect the global market to local conflict.
It's a heavy question, and one you need to grapple with as you continue to